Hi.
Hi, hello James, how
Hi,
are
Jen.
you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay, yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this.
It is
It's
my pleasure. Thank you for being my guest. Just before we start, I should say everyone can go to independentvenueweek.com and see a whole list of venues that they can donate to. There's crowdfunders for each one, and each one is as important as the last. So please go there and check it out. And
yeah, it's very important to donate to venues right now. I think they've only been surviving from those donations, from what I've heard.
yeah,
And obviously it's a very hard time, and there's no vision of when they're going to open again, those small venues.
even
So
open again to a
yeah,
capacity,
donate.
even open again to a capacity where it's, because margins have always been so tight for small venues, and they thrive on packing people in to actually be able to meet any like kind of workable business. So
Exactly.
hopefully they'll be able to come back in full force. We hope.
Yes, and that's why we're here to talk about that, to raise awareness.
Yes.
So,
where are you currently in lockdown?
so right now I'm in France. I was in confinement in Paris. I got sick with COVID, and then I sort of isolated myself, and then a week later it was the government lockdown in France. So I stayed in Paris for a few months during the confinement, and then traveled. So right now I'm in the French countryside where I have a studio with Jehnny Beth, which I'm currently sitting in. And so I do go back and forth from Paris to the countryside, and to visit family and to work in Paris when I need to work. Because I've got an album coming out this week, so it's definitely a week for
I was literally just
work.
I was about to ask you how you've been getting on lockdown, but then I wanted to change it to how have you been controlling your energy, considering you have a fucking solo album coming out, you've got a book coming out, like all these things that are incredibly energy releasing things, and to be contained is in a tiny room. I was wondering how you're dealing with that more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I have to admit, like at first, the week before lockdown, I was playing my first show in London at the Roundhouse, and I remember my first words when I came out of stage was, "I'm ready."
Nice.
This is it. I've worked 2 years on this record. I've worked 6 months on the live representation of that record. I've got, $10,000s invested. I'm ready, but all this is a risk, but I'm doing it in full conscious, and I feel like the beginning of a renaissance, and so I was really excited. And I remember my manager opened like the calendar for 2020, and he looked at me and was like, "You got to be busy, it's not even funny." And I was like, yes, I want to be busy, it's all good. So then you imagine, the cold shower that happened when everything shut, but I'm not the only one in that situation, of course. But I have to admit, at first it was a bit, what do I do? What's going on? So consider regarding the record, I did two things. I moved the release date a little bit. It was supposed to be 8th of May, now it's 12th of June this week. Because I wanted to wait for record shops to reopen, because doing a separate streaming release, digital release and physical release seemed a bit weird, and also because the same as small venues, those record shops have been closed for so long, and they need this, they need to the support. So I felt it was a really good way to maybe to help a little bit. I mean, not a really good one, a small one, but to just consider them in that matter. And also, what I mean, it felt it's what it's been doing for me. I think it made me change the way I see the way we release records, especially in indie rock music, when you release a record on the Friday and then on the Saturday you play in Washington DC. But I mean, no one's really had time to digest a record to make it theirs, And in a way, there's a new dynamic maybe we need to embrace, in the sense of, you know, in the 90s, a record would be the word of mouth. And sometimes records would become big after a year because it's such a great record that everyone, you know, is sharing it. And so maybe there is something to relearn about that. The way we've been producing records, the way we've been releasing records in the last decade was like fast, like everything. You know, the moment of the release is the biggest moment, but maybe it's not that, you know. I know.
I'm gonna. It's always kind of irked me that, and it's always a strange thing for exactly what you said, that when you release an album and you go straight on tour with it, you've not given your fans, especially if it's like even your first album, but you've not given your fans a chance to really get to love that record and get to know every single word, which for me is one of the best things when you see someone singing along to your words.
Yeah.
And that's a super fan who's going to learn it in a few days. It's like, no, I completely agree with that. That's a really good point.
Yeah, now we know we're going to tour in 2021. It gives actually sort of a long-term perspective, you know, on new music, and a way to recreate, you know, energy around the tracks and around the record. So yeah, I'm trying to see the positive side, but I think it is one of them. And yeah. So how has it been for you to be stopped in your own track? Where were you at when it started?
With us, so this year hasn't been like as again, it hasn't been anywhere near as detrimental, I think, as yours has been. But we were heavily relying on South by Southwest. It was the first time we were going. We've got
I was going there as well. Yeah.
We've got a new record ready. We were gonna get an American label, an American agent involved, and then we were going to go to America at the end of the year. So that's kind of all we had planned. So again, we were kind of in the same position as we started in. So it's not like a huge loss. Everything's been postponed at the moment, which was frustrating. And like when we first got that news, it was like incredibly frustrating. And then again, as the situation went on, we're like, okay, everyone's in the same boat. There's some worse shit happening in the world right now. We're just going to have to ride this year out. So it's annoying, and we didn't have like a huge amount of festivals in the summer anyway, so it's fine. We're all getting through it.
Good to know.
I just gigs. Gigs is the one thing that we all live for, and one thing we especially do this band for is be able to travel and go to new places and play music. So the touring aspect, the non-touring aspect, has been, I think, the most difficult thing to adjust to.
What has been for CROWS, what has been the area in London, or the venues that you first connected with? Because I think for a band, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel for me, who started my journey with music in London, I feel the contact with a venue and an attachment and a friendship or a connection can be a way to start, you know. So I don't know if that was the same for you, and how did that work?
Of course. Well, that's the reason I moved to London in the first place, was to play music and meet musicians. And so I moved to London. I met CROWS. We started playing. We played our first gig at the Social in Oxford Street.
I know the Social.
I love it.
It's owned by the Chemical Brothers.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. And Heavenly
and Heavenly Records. Yes. Yeah.
So that's where we played our first gig.
I think so. I mean.
Yeah, someone fact check that.
I think so.
And then it's like Shackwell. Shackwell was the Shackwell Arms was the most, like, I think, defining venue for us, because we loved going there and hanging out anyway. And then we were like, we're going to play here one day. And then we started to play there, and then we start to get to know like the place. And that's the best thing about a venue like the Shackwell, is you know all the people that work there, all your friends go there, so it becomes a big melting pot of creativity and drinking, but fun drinking. And then that just progressed to stuff like Moth Club. Actually saw, so another thing for the listeners, that you run your own record label, Pop Noir, amazing label. I actually saw Lescott, who's one of your artists, at both his Lexington gig and the Moth Club gig. Both of them were great gigs, both great venues for a great artist. So I just wanted to get that in there. What about you? What about you for the London venues or any venues. Where did you play your first gig as John and Jen, Savages, and Jehnny Beth?
God. So I moved to London. I was 20 years old, and with my partner Johnny Hostile, and we had a duo together called John and Jen. And the reason I'm called Jehnny and Jehnny Beth is because people couldn't pronounce my French name, Camille. At the time, I think now people are getting better, but at the time it was like, what? So because the band name was John and Jen, they started to call us John and Jen. So my name became Jehnny, you know. So that was the starting point. Just wanted to clear that up. Then I mean, what we would do, I was a big fan of, when I was 20 years old, I was a big fan of the Kills. And one of the things that they used to say is that they used to phone venues or clubs to find a gig. And so when we moved to London, we had a small rent, a small room in a family house and whatever. I used to write emails or even write our MySpace address on a piece of paper, and every venue we would go to, I would hand it over the counter and ask, where's the promoter? Can I give that to him? Can he check our music and see if we can play?
Great, yeah.
But so much work went into that. It was, you know, you get a lot of, you know, refusals or no answers, and then suddenly, boom, someone books you. So one of those venues was in northwest London called the Luminaire in Kilburn.
Yes.
The Luminaire doesn't exist anymore.
No.
I still have memorabilia of the Luminaire. Where is it? Anyway, I have the metal plate where it says the Luminaire, and we have lamps from there, because when it closed down, we played the last show there, and we demolished the ceiling at the end of the show because we knew it was gonna, you know, be over. And the last night actually at the Luminaire was a funeral. So my good friend Andy Ingalls, who used to run that venue, made a real funeral with a real coffin.
Right.
So we had
nice.
But John and Jen played the last show there, and it was not just us on stage. Gemma Thompson, the guitarist of Savages, was with us as well. She was guitarist for us. So that was the first. What happened is I went to the Luminaire and I looked at the venue. I mean, most venues in London are shitholes. You have to admit that, but it's fine. You know what I mean? They're, you know, there's a vibe to it because it's kind of, you know, it is what it is. But the Luminaire was absolutely amazing, like in terms of sound, in terms of quality of backstage, of service, of looks, of everything. And there were signs everywhere that says, shut the fuck up. If you're here to talk with your pals, go downstairs.
I completely forgot that. Yeah.
And that inspires me to do all the signs at the beginning of Savages. When we were playing gigs, we used to put up signs to say no phones and no distractions, just get into the shows, because we desperately wanted mosh pits and eventually got there. But at the beginning, people were kind of, in London, were kind of, you know, like that. So I was annoyed with that. So I wanted to find any way to make them move. So, but those signs at the Luminaire was what inspired the Savages signs. But anyway, so the Luminaire was a huge inspiration for me, and I left my little MySpace address over the counter, and I said, whoever's the promoter, can you hand that to him? So that was Andy Ingalls, who became one of my best friends, and he called me up and he said, I love what you're doing. Do you want to play that day? You know. So we arrived super early, and the first things we said was like, can we have sound check? Can we have sound check? Can we have sound check? Because obviously you rarely have a sound check when you play a club. Mm-hmm. But the Luminaire was one of those clubs who actually, you know, enabled you to do that. So, and then the Luminaire, I worked there. I did a cloakroom. I think Johnny did security there. We did so much. Like we did DJs. We met Joe Gideon and the Shark. We met Archie Bramson Outfit that way. We met Duke Garwood. We met, I saw incredible gigs. And the sound engineer of the Luminaire became my sound engineer, or sound engineer for John and Jen, and then for Savages. So, and Andy Ingalls, the promoter of the Luminaire, became our Savages tour manager. So it was this sort of, I found a whole family
and again, that's why I love, that's the best thing about small venues, is you've met all those people through one establishment that you all had a love for, and you're all there for a particular reason, for any other reason, but that brought you together to then go on to do such incredible things for the rest of your career. And that's just a small,
the Luminaire was
high road. Like that's such a wonderful story and testament to small venues.
Exactly. I don't think I could have ever. I would have not be, probably would have a different career, but this was really what started me up to find this community. And then with Savages, we played our first show actually in Brighton. I can't remember the name of the venue, but it was a festival by British Sea Power. Okay. And we were sort of called last minute because the band pulled out, and that was our first show. But our first show was supposed to be like a few weeks later for the Pop Noir night at the Château d'Armes, and we played that. But that was actually our second show. Nice. And I really enjoyed that show very much. Yeah.
So wait, was Roundhouse your first gig with Jehnny Beth, or was it?
Oh no, I actually played a small club before the Roundhouse in March 2020. It was the Peckham Audio in South London.
So that's where we did our fundraiser for South by Southwest.
I know, because Niall Kavanagh told me that, who I think is someone we have in common, who's an excellent promoter of small venues, and he told me that you did your night there, or you played there, and it was amazing at Peckham Audio. So that was one of the reasons he convinced me.
It's funny, in like our whole career, so many people came up to us after that night and said that's the best that we've ever heard as sound. And I think that's testament, because that venue is perfectly like shaped, and the sound system is really good. But I was like, it's like a 200 cap room, and people have seen us in like such a range of different places. For them to say that, I was like, this place must be pretty special. People have said that. So
yeah, it's one of those venues that's really been redone and properly redone, which is kind of rare. Yeah, and it's a nice pit.
Yeah. I said it's like a mini Scala, because you can stand anywhere in the room and see the stage. You can see the stage from anywhere you stand in the room. It's like that never happens in venues. Especially
Scala is one of my favorite places, actually. I've never played there, but I love that venue.
No, I've never played there either. I think that's one of the checking off venues that I want to put on the list. Electric Ballroom is one of those venues I've always wanted to do, and we got to do that with Idols. And you did that with Savages.
I love that. Yeah, we did that. Electric Ballroom with Beak of Jeff Barrow's band. They supported us.
Yes. I actually did merch for you that night.
Oh, of course you did. Of course.
And I remember that gig so strongly, because I remember that you had the dancers the first, as you came in, as everyone was filing into the venue, you had those people doing dance routine in the middle of venue, which I thought I remember watching, I was like, fuck, I wish I thought of that. That's such a good idea. And it worked so well, and people watched, and people were like truly mesmerized, and like silent and respectful, and like just gathered around everyone. I remember being like, fuck, that's such a good idea. Really.
Yeah, you can't imagine how much we had to fight to get that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it seems that at the time, every idea like that, a bit creative out of the box ideas, had to be fought so hard.
Best ones are.
Yeah, I know, but it was like, it's incredible how, when you remember that, you know, it's a testament of resilience, and I think you should never, I tend to always forget the bad parts, and only remember the good parts, like how great that was. But sometimes I'm like, yeah, but it was also really fucking hard, like to put together, to convince everybody, to find the money, to convince the promoter, to convince the agent, to convince the management, to be like, it's okay, it's art, you know?
Exactly. And you have to do something to stand out, and that's always stuck with me, and I'm sure it stuck with everyone else who was there and watched it. So yeah, you've always got to strive to do something different and something inspiring, because that's how you get remembered, and that's how you grow your career to the career that you've had.
It's fun also.
Exactly.
And it's collaborating with people. It's important, you know.
Yeah. should we take some questions from the fans?
Yes, happily, yeah.
All right. So, Tony Leaves says, do you have a particular pre-show ritual to prepare before a show? Can you remember how you warmed up for your early morning show at the 100 Club in 2016? How did playing a gig at 9 a.m. compare to playing an evening show?
God, yeah.
Certainly a three-part question from Tony there.
Sure. Thank you, Tony, for your question. So the rituals, yes, I have rituals. I think one of the earliest things I did, I think, to prepare myself was to always remind myself a sentence, like a mantra before going on stage. But every time just before going on stage, I would forget it. And unintentionally, I'd just be like, what's the sentence? What's the sentence? There's a sentence I need to remind myself before I go on, and I can't remember what it is. So I'm like, think, what it is. And then it would dawn on me that actually the sentence was, do not think.
Nice.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's it. That's the one. Do not think. Yeah, I think the idea of switching off part of your brain, but switching on to a different kind of connection, which is to me a higher form of intelligence, is the state of total attention, total concentration, and presence, right now. And it's more the body that is intelligent than the mind. It's a different thing. And I personally miss it a lot right now, because I think I need it to be sane, and it's one of the ways I can communicate with other people on a level that I feel is much more rewarding than any conversation. Sorry, James.
Do not apologize.
So that would be the thing. Do not think. Rituals, yeah, I have a lot of rituals. I used to box before going on stage. I needed to be sweaty before I go on. Otherwise, the beginning of the show is like a slow, you're still warming up on the first 3-4 songs. So
yeah.
So I used to really go running or train on boxing pads, and so I arrive, I'm completely warmed up and I'm ready to go. And then I think that would be it. And in terms of the 8 a.m. gig, that was insane. It was the release of the second House Savages album, and we just landed from LA. And we did a 9 a.m. show at the 100 Club, which is also a very famous English London venue.
I love the 100 Club. That's one of my other favorites.
Huge history, huge history. And actually they remind you of that history with a lot of great photographies on the walls.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So you have to feel not impressed by that. It was insane, that show. I think I don't even think I was working on automatics. Like I don't even remember, but it was the same though. I didn't see any difference in terms of the result. Like the show was, I did my warm up, I was ready, I was fired up. And this as a performer, I think when you go on stage, you don't feel fatigue, you don't feel hunger, you don't feel it, you don't feel hurt, or if you hurt yourself, all that disappears with the adrenaline. So
it's funny you said it, and this is interesting for your warming up before you go on, because I still get really bad stage fright, and I've always kind of suffered really, really badly from stage fright. But one thing that we always open our set with a song called Silver Tongues, which we wrote originally because it's quite monotonous and repetitive. And we wrote that originally because to get people into the room, because when a band plays, when you're a young band, no one's there at the beginning. So we play the song that's really repetitive, really monotonous, and then at the end kicks in really fast.
Yeah.
And that for me is my warm up, because the beginning is so monotonous and repetitive, and then by the time it kicks in for the really heavy fast bit, I'm like, okay, I've arrived. And I literally just like it switched. There's like something in my head that switches gear, and I'm like, okay, now I'm in the gig.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
it's funny you say that, like how you wrote a song thinking about the stage performance.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I like
I've actually
that.
never thought. Yeah, that's the first time I've kind of looked at it in that way. But
It's
that's
the way
completely
how
correct.
playing in small clubs and beginning as a band can shape what you write. It's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool, Tony. Thank you. Danielle K asks, how does writing a solo album compare with writing an album with a band? Did you find it easier or harder?
There's no easy.
No,
Isn't
writing
it?
an album's not very easy.
I think they both have their challenges. I mean, you know that from being in a band, right? Being in a band is a challenge. There is this, I think I felt there was a lot of my energy that was directed towards trying to keep everyone into the same sort of frame of mind, pulling the energies in instead of them going out. And, and a lot of this was also tiring and taking a lot of my time and space. So doing a solo obviously is very different, although the solo record I made is a complete collaborative record. Like it's not a solo record, like it's a collaborative record in so many ways. But it had these different challenges. I mean, I think this, making To Love Is To Live was a challenge for me. When I decided to make the record, I didn't know what I was going to do. So it was a clean slate. But that's what I wanted, because I felt fear and I felt in danger. You're never really in danger, but I think when you're creating music, you can feel sometimes vulnerable to the state of feeling like you can be attacked or something.
Yeah, well, it's you essentially. So it's what everyone's seeing is it's you, and it's under your own name. So everything comes down to you. No matter how collaborative the album is that you've made, it's the way people see it is it's you. So that pressure must be obviously something to thrive on, but also quite terrifying.
Yeah, maybe in the band. Do you think like in the band there is this idea of you share the responsibility, or he wrote that.
Yeah.
Or
we're really like democratic when we write. So it's someone have an idea, then we'll work on the idea. I'll be in the corner writing and scribbling and singing, and then I'll take it away and go home, write more at home, bring it back in, and then sorry, I have to let my cat out. He's fucking Lenny. Go on. Sorry.
Come on, let me.
Unprofessional. Go on, mate. Bastard.
It's all right.
Sorry, where were we? Yeah, so again, I haven't written my solo album yet. But when I do,
not yet.
Not yet. But when I do, I'll let you know. I'll let you know.
I think
how scared I was.
To try to answer better than I did, I think maybe there isn't, like when I said there's nothing easy, I think there isn't a situation where if it was easy, I wouldn't do it. I think I like the challenge of not knowing,
Yeah. 100%.
And so.
And the reward is greater when it's a bigger challenge. So.
Yeah, you need to not feel. Yeah, you need to feel like you've worked for your results, and
that's it.
And yeah, so I would say it's they both had their challenges for sure.
Good. Let's bring it back to the venue question. Jessica Bell asks, how did playing in small independent venues in your early career help you develop your fan base across the country and as an artist?
Well, I explained it a little bit earlier, but I think it is so important, like, to have those places. I remember when Madame Jojo's closed down,
Oh,
when
fuck.
the 12 bar, the Buffalo Bar in
You've just
Highbury in
completely reminded me
Islington.
of Madame Jojo's. I've completely forgot about
Yeah,
Madame Jojo's.
incredible place.
Mm.
I played there a few times. I played there with John and Jen. I played there with Savages. You know, the Lexington, I mean, the names, it's endless, like there's so many, but I think it's so important to find a community, but also to gain experience, you know, and to confront yourself with different crowds. And London has this capacity to be so varied as well. Like, all the areas are very different. So if you're playing a different club, you will play to a different audience almost. It has this sort of, it's so big, London.
Yeah, true.
So you can do a tour in London, basically.
Yeah.
But one thing I'm a bit sad about is that, so I moved to London when I was 20 years old, and I did this sort of education of playing, you know, lifting my own gear, breaking my back so many times in the snow, in the rain, in the cold, in the sun, whatever.
Yeah.
And you know, lifting gear. I mean, I remember the Old Blue Last. I mean, how many stairs? I used to have like a farfisa, a double keyboard farfisa, and a Leslie cabin. They both weigh 70 to 90 kilos each. The Old Blue Last. How many stairs is that? And there was no elevator, and we did it. Like, we lifted. I mean, that's how much we wanted to do it. You know, it's how much we cared, and it just mattered to us so much. And
three
then
flights of stairs to play a half an hour song.
Yeah.
For £50 and some beers.
Oh yeah, or sometimes you pay for playing.
Yeah.
Because obviously you get a ticket, you know. So the ticket is more expensive than the £50 you're going to be paid to play.
Yeah.
It could be quite disarming and disastrous, but it's an education, and I think I've learned that I've learned a certain resilience, you know, I've a DIY mentality, making my own merch.
Yeah.
Making my own merch stand. I remember I used to make it look really good, and we used to sell quite a lot because of that. And after the show, you run to the merch stand where someone else is packing, you know, and then there's obviously a club night that starts after, so you have to unload all your gear out through a crowd of drunk people on a Saturday night. We've all done that.
Yeah.
So all that is. And also I've had other experiences where you play it in front of one person and the one person leaves after 2 songs, and then you stop playing, and then you go sit down and you're like, right, maybe I should rethink a few things. So it's an education. When I started Savages, we've never ever played in front of an empty venue. It was always packed. I've never had a venue empty for Savages, which, you know what, after all the experience I had before, when that happened to me in my life, I knew the value of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think before a show, I would always ask, even when we played, I don't know, you know, like the Forum, or when we played like venues that we sold out, I used to go to my tour manager and say, how many tickets? Because my fear was to have empty spaces in front of me, because I had lived that, you know, but as long as it was packed, the fear would go away. I was so excited. I was like, so that trajectory for me built me that idea that as long as there's people in the room, everything after that is fun. Right? I know the value of that, and I know how much it can go away, and so if there's people, I will give my best. And also if there were less people, like some festivals we played, you know, like at 4 p.m. in Norway, or I don't know. Mm-hmm. You have people with kids, and you give it all, you know, you give it all, because there's never there's always someone in there that's gonna really dig it, you know.
Yeah, that's the point I always hit home to people is, and especially when you go and do stuff like the Great Escape, where you do South by Southwest, everyone's like, you need to play as many gigs as you can, blah blah blah. I'm like, no, I'd rather do the right number of gigs and play them as well as I can, play them to the best of our ability. Because if you play a shit gig and you play shit, then someone's going to see you play shit and be like, and they're going to say, why do people like this band? They were fucking shit when I saw them. But if you play the best you can every time you play, then you've got no excuse, and that is who you are.
Yeah, you're indestructible.
Yes, good. How many was that? That's 1, 2, 3. Ian Andrews asks, you've collaborated with a number of artists in the past: Primal Scream, Bobby Gillespie, Trent Moeller, the Gorillaz. Is there anyone you dream of collaborating with? It's a tough question.
Not really.
On the spot. Oh no, okay,
fine. David Bowie.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Know what I mean?
There's actually a second question about Bowie in here.
Oh.
So let's just segue into that one. Wait, where is it? Fuck.
Well, who would be the person you would love to collaborate with?
I don't know, because it's like, what would I do? Would I just sing with them, or them singing CROWS? I don't know. I would love to have someone else singing CROWS and me like play the keyboard or something.
Nice.
Just take a back seat.
How do you feel about your position as a front singer? Is it something that you struggle with? You know, and I say that in the best possible way, because I think front singers who struggle are usually the best to watch. You know, because that friction is really nice to see. But does it come easy, or?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think the like I said before, the stage fright, the bit before the gig, is still really bad. Like I want to throw up, and I can't be around anyone. Like that's the thing. We'll be stood side stage ready to go on. The rest of the band, Steve, Jit, Sam, they're all completely fine, just like chatting like normal, and I'll be there completely silent, completely in my own head, trying not to throw up, trying to just breathe through. Like it's like an anxiety attack. Obviously, anyone here who's had stage fright before can consider. But then it's fine. As soon as I'm on stage, I fucking love it. I just, again, it's like a switch goes on, and I'm like, I'm on stage, and that's the thing that people who meet me say, "Wow, you're really different to how you are on stage." I'm like, yeah, because it's a performance, and for me, it's a release, and I'm quite monotoned and monotonous in real life, and I'm like, I'm very one-to-one. Like I can have I'll have it. When I have conversation with people at the merch desk, I'll talk to someone for a long time and have a full conversation one-on-one, because I don't know, it's still weird to be put on a level of someone different than I'm just a human. I get up stage and I can play, but if you want to come chat to me, I'll fucking chat about whatever you want to chat about and be quite one-on-one. So I don't know. It is a weird question. Some bits I thrive with, other bits I really struggle with because I'm not super confident in myself a lot of the time. But as soon as I'm on stage, that all goes away and I'm fine on stage. But then even exactly. But then even when I'm on stage, that does kind of wiggle in with what I say in between songs, because that's when I'm like, oh god, like I can hide behind the singing because I'm so confident with the singing. But as soon as it comes to speaking to a large group audience, I'm like, fuck. Like,
yeah, but you know what I always told myself about that, because I know that anxiety about how do I speak to a crowd.
Yeah.
And the way I triggered it for me was to just imagine in my head and speaking to one person, because speaking to one person and speaking to a crowd is exactly the same thing. Hey, you know what? You'd say that to one person, but you can say that to a crowd as well. Hey, you know what? I'm having a really good time. You know what I mean? Like, you just imagine, that's how I did it for me. I was like, how to respect a crowd.
That's very good advice, and something I could have used
Try it.
8 years ago, maybe.
I think I got that advice from Josh Homme,
really?
who read he read some sort of books about military commands, how to command crowds.
Oh, cool.
And one of the points in it was also always ask a yes or no question.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing tonight? But if you say, what time did you arrive today? It's gonna be...
True. That's really good. That's really interesting. Love that.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh, for the advice.
All right, let's finish it with Do you ever asks, there we go, I found it. You perform some of David Bowie's songs live. Which era of David Bowie is your favorite?
Okay, there won't be one. There will be several, probably all of them. But I think that my first hook to David Bowie was Hunky Dory. That was the first record that really, as a teenager, I really got into. I mean, my first discovery of Bowie was through a best-of cassette I had.
Nice.
So, Rebel, all the classics. And then the first record I bought was Hunky Dory. Which I found incredibly well written and rich, and also he was speaking to the teenager I was, Yeah. All those lines, about being misunderstood and running away from home, really spoke to me at an age where I really wanted to escape, because I felt there were parts of my personality I couldn't express where I was. So that, and then I probably go to the end, to Black Star after that, because for me the death of Bowie and the release of Black Star, and the listening of Black Star before and after his death as well, and discovering how much he was speaking from beyond, and it was really moving. He left something for us to mourn him with, and so, and the connection between morbidity, not morbidity, sorry, that's too bad of a word, but or on disappearance, or on mortality, that's the word I wanted to find. Art and mortality, the fact that the record I'm making, when I was making To Love Is To Live, I always thought about my own mortality, and I was like, this record's going to stay after me, it's going to be Shanzoom.
Hey man, you're right.
How's it going?
That's Johnny. So my own mortality. I don't know what I was saying, but I think when I was making the record, I thought about, I really need to finish this record before I die, and I was obsessed with it, and every day I was thinking about it, which brought, I think, sort of an urgency to the music, and a sort of rawness, and trying to be as honest as I could. But so Bowie, that would be, Black Star. And Black Star was very influential as well, the same as it was influenced by To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar, and how much it was about mixing genres and introducing jazz, and really creating a record that has a sense of a journey, and it was a world in itself that you could live in. So that really was a big influence for me for To Love Is To Live. And then recently I've rediscovered Heaven. And actually it's one of my favorite records of Bowie, and I felt that it was so hopeful. It was like it's sort of a slow dance of hope and despair, but I think it lifts you up, so it gives you hope, and that's the sort of music I'd love to be able to do, which I'm thinking about right now.
Great. Go inspire emotion in every aspect of what you do. Otherwise, in yourself and your fans. Otherwise, what's the point? That's what music is, isn't it? It's emotion.
Yeah, it is. It is exactly. It is exactly. Actually, Flood, the producer Flood, who I worked with for my record, for some of the songs on the record, said exactly what you just said. One of the first things he said in the studio was, "What do you feel when we're listening to something? What do you feel?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" It was like, "I don't care what you think. I want to know what you feel." You know.
Sounds like a good producer.
Well, considering all the records he's made, I think he's made his point about being a good producer. I agree. He's a good producer. He's a mad producer, and I think he's getting madder and madder as he gets older.
I think they all do. I think that comes with the job.
Yeah, and also unlearning everything you've learned and embracing the chaos, because he reminded me how much we need to not forget that making music is also accidents, you know, and mistakes, and we need to sometimes, because of the financial situation, for instance, you have a budget, you go to a studio that's expensive, so you need to feel like at the end of the day, oh, today we had a very productive day. We recorded the drums, then we recorded the guitar, and then we recorded this, but there was no creativity at all. And
that's it. Well, it's you've got to build the bones to something to add the meat. So you have to have those boring days to have the creative days, and have those days where you can really do what you want or do something weird that then will create something that you didn't expect to create, I feel.
Yeah, Flood would definitely take you through that road in a very scary way, to the point that you feel like you don't know where the song is. You've lost completely track of what you're going for, but the feeling of being lost is something he wants you to feel for as long as you can, because he feels that that's in that imbalance that you can find the truth of the song.
Beautiful.
Mad. Tell you, mad.
I think,
right.
Should we? Yeah, let's leave it there. I don't like when these things go too long. Me and Joe talked for like almost 2 hours, and I was like, I don't think anyone's going to sit here and listen to this for 2 hours. But, so I think let's call it there. I think we covered. I
do understand, though. I love to speak to Joe for 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an unpleasant thing to speak to Joe. So,
great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for everyone who's been listening to this as well. And listen to CROWS, or the CROWS. Actually, I never know, because savages.
Yeah.
What do you say for CROWS? Is it the
It's just CROWS, but
it's just CROWS. Okay, yeah, so I've been right. So yeah, listen to CROWS. A great band. I saw you supporting Idols at the Electric Ballroom, and it was really, really good, and and support the venues. Donate